It was a crisp autumn morning in suburban Ohio, the kind where the air smells faintly of damp leaves and freshly brewed coffee. The neighborhood, usually calm and quiet, carried a subtle tension today. Officer Daniels adjusted the brim of his cap as he guided Rex, his German Shepherd K9 partner, up the walkway of a modest, brick-faced house. The call had been routine, a welfare check for a missing pet, but Officer Daniels' instincts whispered that today might be different. His eyes scanned the surroundings, noting the neat but slightly overgrown garden, the swing set swaying gently in the morning breeze, and the faint sound of children playing inside. Inside the living room, a cluster of adults had already gathered. A team of lawyers, representing the daycare and the child's family in a pending liability dispute, were mid-argument, their voices sharp and tense. Stacks of papers cluttered the table, their edges curling slightly under the morning sun filtering through sheer curtains. The air smelled faintly of coffee, paper, and the faintly sweet aroma of pancakes cooling on a plate nearby. The lawyers were engrossed in their debate, gesturing toward documents with pens and shaking heads in frustration, oblivious to the world outside their focused bubble. Amidst the seriousness and legal tension, Emma, a 3-year-old with chestnut hair and large curious eyes, sat on a colorful rug in the corner. She had been playing quietly with her stuffed rabbit, her tiny fingers adjusting the ears and paws with deliberate care. She hummed a soft tune, one she must have invented herself, entirely unaware of the legal storm raging a few feet away. The lawyers' voices, full of authority and professional weight, seemed distant to her small world. She was fully absorbed in the imaginary adventure of her rabbit, which today, apparently, was a brave explorer searching for a hidden treasure somewhere under the couch. Then the doorbell rang. The lawyers barely looked up, muttering about interruptions, assuming it was just a neighbor or another delivery. But Emma's ears perked up, and her small head tilted with curiosity. The sound had a different rhythm, a subtle tone that intrigued her in a way nothing else had this morning. Officer Daniels' voice called from the porch, firm but calm, as he announced himself and Rex. The sound of his footsteps on the wooden floorboards drew Emma's attention. She glanced over at the approaching figures, her eyes locking on the large dog with an alert stance and steady gaze. Rex, trained for search and protection, had already sniffed the air, alert to every scent. But when his gaze fell upon Emma, something remarkable happened. The usual barrier between a trained police dog and civilians seemed to dissolve. Emma's tiny hand extended, a gesture so delicate yet filled with confidence, and Rex hesitated for a heartbeat before leaning forward slightly, acknowledging the connection. The room fell silent, the lawyers frozen mid-sentence, papers suspended in motion. They had expected a routine visit, a check of the premises, maybe a brief demonstration of the K9's abilities. No one had expected this, the silent, instant recognition between a 3-year-old child and a police dog. Emma approached slowly, her small feet padding lightly on the rug. She spoke softly, words almost a whisper, so quiet that the lawyers barely registered them, yet Rex reacted immediately, tail wagging, ears perking, and eyes attentive. Officer Daniels observed the interaction with a mixture of caution and fascination. He had handled dozens of searches, rescues, and investigations with Rex over the years, but something about this was different. The bond forming in that moment was more than instinct. It was understanding, a communication that transcended the usual commands and protocols. One of the lawyers cleared his throat, attempting to regain authority. Perhaps we should continue," he began, waving his hand at the documents, trying to draw attention back to the legal matter. But his words faltered as he caught sight of Emma kneeling beside Rex. The child's eyes were bright with focus, her little fingers pointing gently toward the backyard through the sliding glass door. The dog responded with a subtle tilt of the head, a low growl, and a sniff in the direction she indicated. The lawyer stopped mid-sentence, his mind racing. Every logical argument seemed trivial compared to the scene unfolding before him. Emma, sensing she had captured Rex's attention, whispered again, this time a few more words that no adult seemed to fully understand. The dog's body shifted subtly, a signal Officer Daniels recognized instantly. Alert, attentive, ready. The tension in the room became palpable. Lawyers exchanged glances, their expressions oscillating between disbelief and intrigue. They were trained to analyze, to argue, to control the narrative in any courtroom. But here, in this living room, their expertise felt strangely irrelevant. The focus had shifted entirely to a 3-year-old and her quiet command over a trained police dog. Outside, a neighbor paused while jogging, glancing at the house. From the street, the scene looked ordinary. A police car parked in the driveway, a man and his dog approaching the front door. But inside, the energy was electric, almost palpable. Emma took another step, her small hand brushing the air toward the backyard. Rex followed, stepping carefully around her tiny feet, his eyes never leaving hers. Officer Daniels knelt slightly, keeping his body low, ensuring safety without disrupting the child's unspoken leadership. It was a delicate balance, trusting the instincts of both a toddler and a dog trained for obedience and search. The lawyers tried again to redirect attention. "Perhaps we should review the liability forms," one stammered, but again, his voice trailed off. The moment demanded more than legal jargon. It demanded observation, patience, and humility. The child was leading, guiding, and demonstrating a skill none of the adults could replicate. Every movement, every soft word from Emma elicited a response from Rex. The dog's behavior was deliberate, methodical, almost reverent, as though he understood the urgency and intelligence behind the child's gestures. Emma reached the edge of the living room, pausing at the sliding glass door. She pointed decisively to the backyard, then looked back at Rex with a nod. The dog stepped forward, sniffing the air, tail raised and eyes scanning the area she had indicated. Officer Daniels followed cautiously, hand on the leash, fully aware that this was no ordinary search. The lawyers trailed reluctantly, notebooks and papers clutched in hands now tinged with awe. This wasn't just about a missing pet anymore. It was about trust, intuition, and the extraordinary clarity of a 3-year-old's mind. As they approached the backyard, the lawyers noticed small signs they had overlooked. A slight disturbance in the fallen leaves, a faint whimpering sound that seemed almost imperceptible. Emma's eyes lit up as she moved toward the sound. Rex followed immediately, nose low, tail steady, ears perked. The lawyers stopped, whispering to each other, their previous debates rendered insignificant. Every moment stretched with anticipation. What they were about to witness could not be ignored or explained away with legal theory. And then it happened. Emma parted a few leaves with her tiny hands and revealed the source of the earlier whimpers. A small, shivering dog, tangled and scared, hiding in a corner. The missing pet had been there all along, but no adult had noticed. Emma's smile was small but triumphant. She looked up at Rex, who nudged the dog gently, reassuring it, and at Officer Daniels, whose jaw had loosened in disbelief. The lawyers remained frozen, their mouths open, mid-argument, mid-thought. Words failed them. A 3-year-old had achieved what trained adults and professionals could not. In that quiet moment, the room exhaled collectively. The lawyers scribbled notes they didn't need. Officer Daniels praised Rex in a soft, low voice. Emma hugged the rescued dog, whispering words of comfort that no one else understood, but Rex seemed to recognize as important. The tension that had filled the house evaporated, replaced by awe, relief, and wonder. A simple welfare check had transformed into a remarkable demonstration of intuition, courage, and the unique bond between a child and a police dog. By the time they returned inside, lawyers were quieter, humbled. Their earlier arguments seemed trivial, the legal battle postponed in favor of recognizing something far more meaningful. Emma returned to her stuffed rabbit, still small, still 3 years old, but having demonstrated a presence and clarity that would leave an indelible mark on everyone in the room. In suburban Ohio, on a crisp autumn morning, an ordinary visit had turned extraordinary, and all it took was the quiet determination of a 3-year-old and her unique understanding of a 4-legged friend. The sun had climbed higher in the sky, casting long, warm streaks across the suburban backyard, but the tension inside the house remained palpable. Lawyers lingered at the sliding door, still recovering from the surreal spectacle they had witnessed moments before. A 3-year-old had commanded the attention of a fully trained police dog and led it to a missing pet, a small, trembling dog now nestled safely in Emma's arms. The scene had left Officer Daniels shaking his head in disbelief, but he also felt an unfamiliar pride. Rex, alert yet calm, sat obediently beside Emma, eyes trained on her movements, waiting for the next cue. Emma, oblivious to the stunned adults behind her, continued softly speaking to Rex in her own gentle, melodic tones. Each word seemed to carry weight far beyond her size or age. The lawyers, whose morning had been consumed by legal strategies, risk assessments, and the tedious minutiae of liability forms, now found themselves powerless observers. Their pens hovered over notebooks, words frozen mid-sentence, unable to compete with the quiet authority emanating from a 3-year-old. Even the youngest intern in the room felt a strange reverence. Emma's instincts, her intuition, and her unspoken understanding of the dog had completely shifted the room's dynamics. Officer Daniels stepped forward slowly, careful not to disturb the delicate interaction between the child and his partner. "Rex, stay," he said softly, his voice a measured balance of command and caution. The dog obeyed, tail wagging subtly, but his eyes never left Emma. The officers and lawyers watched as she knelt down, making tiny gestures with her hand, pointing toward corners of the backyard, whispering to the dog and tilting her head as if seeking confirmation. The precision of her signals, though gentle, was unmistakable. This was no ordinary play. Emma was guiding, instructing, and directing a trained police dog with an authority that stunned even seasoned professionals. One of the lawyers, a tall woman with dark glasses, whispered to her colleague, "Is this real? How is she doing this?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her mix of skepticism and awe. The other lawyer, who had spent decades navigating courtrooms and negotiations, shook his head, unable to find words. They had seen children cry, throw tantrums, and mimic adult behavior, but never had they witnessed one leading a police dog with such unwavering confidence. Every gesture Emma made commanded the dog's attention, and Rex responded instantly. The bond, though silent, was unmistakable. Emma suddenly stood, pointing firmly toward a dense cluster of bushes along the edge of the backyard. The dog's ears perked, body stiffened, and he slowly approached the area, nose low, sniffing the ground. The lawyers froze, their eyes widening as the dog's behavior shifted from obedient waiting to alert investigation. Officer Daniels felt a surge of adrenaline. He had handled search operations before, but rarely had he seen a child function as a true guide in a real-time search. The adults moved cautiously behind, notebooks clutched, unsure whether to intervene or simply witness the unfolding miracle. As Rex sniffed along the bush line, Emma crouched down again, speaking softly, her hands moving in deliberate patterns. She wasn't screaming, pointing, or commanding in the way adults might expect. Her instructions were subtle, almost musical in cadence, yet precise enough to elicit immediate responses. The dog's body language mirrored her calm but deliberate energy. Tail held high, ears forward, muscles tensed, eyes scanning each crevice, each shadow. Officer Daniels whispered encouragement, marveling at how instinct and intuition could merge so perfectly between child and canine. The lawyers could only gape, caught in the silent awe of the moment. Minutes stretched like hours as Emma guided Rex methodically around the backyard, toward a faint rustling sound she had detected. The lawyers whispered among themselves, one jotting down hurried notes, another shaking her head in disbelief. Emma's instructions were simple, almost imperceptible, a tilt of the head, a whisper, a hand reaching out, but the effect was undeniable. Rex followed, precise and patient, responding to cues the adults could barely interpret. The missing dog's whimpers grew louder, and Emma's smile widened. She had sensed it all along, trusting instincts that far surpassed any adult's trained perception. Suddenly, Rex froze and let out a low, controlled bark, signaling a discovery. Emma approached, bending slightly as the small, frightened dog peeked from beneath the leaves. She whispered gently, coaxing it out, and the dog stepped cautiously toward her hands. The lawyers gasped collectively, frozen mid-sentence, realizing that the child had navigated the search with an intelligence and composure beyond her years. Officer Daniels knelt beside Emma, quietly directing Rex to stay calm, while she reassured the rescued pet with soft, soothing words. The scene was almost magical, a tiny human bridging the gap between chaos, instinct, and resolution. The lawyers, though accustomed to authority and control, found themselves humbled. Their arguments about liability, regulations, and legal obligations suddenly seemed trivial. Every move Emma made carried weight, yet required no documentation or precedent, only trust, observation, and empathy. Even seasoned officers felt a jolt of respect for the child's intuitive brilliance. The energy in the backyard was electric. The combination of innocence and instinct was a force no one had anticipated. Every eye followed Emma, every breath held in anticipation of the next decision she would make. Emma carefully lifted the frightened dog into her arms, cradling it gently against her chest. Rex stayed by her side, nose twitching, ears alert, as if approving the successful recovery. The child's eyes sparkled with satisfaction, unaware of the monumental effect her actions had on the adults surrounding her. Lawyers were still paused mid-sentence, some whispering incredulous comments, others simply observing in stunned silence. Officer Daniels allowed a small, proud smile. This wasn't just a simple recovery. It was a testament to intuition, empathy, and the quiet authority a child could wield. As Emma returned to the house, the lawyers slowly regained composure, but their tone had shifted. Their words now carried hesitation, a newfound respect, and an acknowledgement of something beyond their understanding. The rescued dog nestled safely beside Emma, tail wagging slightly, while Rex remained attentive, eyes never leaving her. Officer Daniels patted Rex gently, proud yet astonished, marveling at how seamlessly the child and dog had communicated. In the midst of legal disputes, complex paperwork, and adult arguments, a 3-year-old had quietly rewritten the rules. The atmosphere inside the house softened. Lawyers, once rigid and argumentative, now whispered, exchanging glances that conveyed both respect and awe. Even interns, previously unnoticed, felt the weight of the moment. Emma, oblivious to the scrutiny, returned to her stuffed rabbit, rocking it gently. She had accomplished something extraordinary, a feat that transcended age, size, and authority. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, leaves drifting lazily across the yard, bearing witness to a moment that would be recounted for years. The child had demonstrated courage, insight, and an almost magical understanding of the world around her. Officer Daniels watched the scene unfold quietly, reflecting on how often adults overlook the power of observation, intuition, and calm presence. Rex, a dog trained to obey commands, had responded fully to the subtle guidance of a child. The lawyers, meanwhile, were forced to reconsider their approach, humbled by the demonstration of quiet intelligence. Emma's actions had bridged worlds: the instinctive animal, the analytical adult, and the perceptive child, all converging in a single moment of clarity. The ordinary morning had transformed into an extraordinary lesson, one that would resonate far beyond the walls of this suburban home. By the time breakfast dishes had cooled and lawyers gathered their papers, the energy in the house had irrevocably changed. Respect, awe, and quiet admiration lingered in the air, mingling with the faint aroma of pancakes and the earthy scent of fallen leaves from the backyard. Emma, small yet formidable in her presence, had commanded attention in a way no courtroom, argument, or legal precedent could replicate. Officer Daniels allowed a small chuckle to escape, patting Rex's head. A 3-year-old had taught adults a lesson in patience, observation, and quiet authority, proof that extraordinary insight often comes in the smallest and most unexpected forms. The backyard was quiet now, the only sounds being the soft rustle of fallen leaves and the occasional whisper of a distant wind through the trees. The rescued dog, shivering slightly from fear and cold, nestled in Emma's small arms as if it had found safety at last. Yet despite the calm, the room remained charged with an unexplainable tension. Lawyers, who had moments earlier been arguing about liability clauses and technicalities, stood frozen near the sliding glass door, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and awe. What had started as a simple welfare check had turned into a demonstration of instinct, bravery, and intuition that no adult could have anticipated. Emma, unaware of the weight of her actions, held the small dog gently, whispering soft reassurances in a tone that only a 3-year-old could wield so effectively. Her small hand stroked the animal's head with precision, coaxing it to relax while her gaze swept across the backyard. Something about her body language and calm confidence commanded respect, not just from Rex, the trained K9, but from the adults observing in stunned silence. The lawyers had long relied on rules, regulations, and precedent, but none of that mattered in this moment. Emma's instincts, her ability to sense and communicate, had entirely taken the lead. Officer Daniels knelt nearby, his hand resting lightly on Rex's shoulder, careful not to interfere but ready to act if needed. He had been on countless searches, rescues, and emergency calls, yet nothing had prepared him for this display of understanding between child and canine. Rex, trained to obey commands but also to interpret environmental cues, had deferred entirely to Emma's subtle gestures. Each step she took, each word she whispered guided him. It was as though she had unlocked a silent language, one that bridged human and animal intelligence in a way the officers had never witnessed. The lawyers, still hovering near the doorway, whispered among themselves. "Is she directing him?" one asked incredulously. Her colleague, a man with salt and pepper hair and a reputation for meticulous courtroom strategy, shook his head slowly. I don't know," he admitted, eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. They had prepared for arguments, for discussions about responsibility and procedure, but they had not anticipated this. A toddler, barely 3 years old, had outmaneuvered their experience, intuition, and authority, guiding a trained K9 to a discovery they could not have managed alone. Emma carefully lowered the small dog to the ground, letting it sniff around the perimeter of the bush where it had been hiding. She moved methodically, checking each corner with soft gestures and subtle signals. Rex mirrored her movements, alert and precise, maintaining a silent but protective presence. Officer Daniels, fascinated, noted the synchronization. He knew K9 teams often relied on extensive training, but here, a child's innate understanding had created a seamless team. The backyard, once quiet and ordinary, had transformed into a stage for something extraordinary. A demonstration of natural communication, patience, and problem-solving beyond the capacity of most adults. The small dog, now slightly steadier on its paws, began to explore cautiously. Emma followed, keeping a close eye on it while simultaneously issuing soft, quiet cues to Rex. The lawyers exchanged glances, realizing that they were witnessing a rare intersection of innocence, intelligence, and instinct. Words felt inadequate. Legal documents seemed meaningless. All the experience they had accumulated over decades of courtrooms and negotiations could not prepare them for the precise, quiet authority of a 3-year-old leading a police dog to success. Every gesture Emma made was deliberate yet gentle, persuasive without force, commanding without intimidation. Then, as if guided by intuition alone, Emma paused at a small indentation in the ground beneath the bushes. She knelt, running her fingers along the slight depression, and whispered something so softly that even Officer Daniels had to lean closer to hear. Rex responded immediately, ears forward, muscles tensed, eyes focused. The lawyers, previously frozen, now leaned in involuntarily, curiosity overpowering their professional reservations. The moment stretched as the child and dog seemed to communicate silently, a combination of gestures, glances, and energy translating into purposeful action. The air in the backyard grew thick with anticipation. Emma's tiny hand parted the leaves, revealing a subtle movement beneath. The shivering dog had discovered something, a small toy partially buried, likely lost days earlier. Emma's eyes lit up in triumph. The toy might have seemed insignificant, but it was proof that the pet had been alive, aware, and capable of interacting with its environment despite fear and distress. Rex, sensing the completion of the task, stepped back and sat obediently, tail wagging slightly, acknowledging that the mission was accomplished. The lawyers could only gape, their earlier disputes entirely forgotten. In the span of minutes, a child had solved a puzzle that adults could not even begin to understand. Officer Daniels exhaled quietly, impressed by the efficiency, patience, and clarity Emma exhibited. He made a mental note for future operations. Sometimes, the smallest participants offered the sharpest insights. Rex remained alert, occasionally sniffing the toy and then looking back at Emma as if seeking approval. The dog's responses were almost reverential, acknowledging the child's leadership in a way that defied traditional hierarchy. Every adult watching felt a mixture of amazement and humility. No words could capture the gravity of the lesson being silently taught. Trust instincts, observe carefully, and recognize that intelligence can manifest in unexpected forms. The lawyers, who had initially tried to maintain professional composure, now whispered to each other with barely controlled excitement. "I've never seen anything like this," one admitted. She just knows," said the other, his voice tinged with disbelief. They had encountered countless witnesses, experts, and professionals in their careers, yet none had conveyed such natural authority or problem-solving skills. Emma, small and seemingly fragile, had demonstrated control, precision, and empathy beyond her years. The realization was humbling, forcing the adults to acknowledge that expertise was not always measured in experience or formal training. Emma returned the small toy to the rescued dog, watching it nuzzle against her palm. She whispered soothing words, guiding the animal with patience and care, and Rex remained by her side, eyes tracking every subtle motion. The adults observed silently, captivated. It was more than a rescue. It was a masterclass in communication, trust, and instinctive leadership. The backyard had become a theater of quiet marvels, where a 3-year-old's awareness surpassed all expectations. Lawyers who had argued over contracts and procedures could only witness, humbled and amazed, as a child and a dog completed a task no adult had anticipated. As the moments passed, Emma led Rex and the rescued dog back toward the house. The lawyers followed hesitantly, their focus now completely shifted. Officer Daniels opened the sliding door carefully, allowing the group to re-enter without disrupting the delicate balance of the moment. Emma carried the small dog with care, and Rex walked obediently beside her, a silent sentinel. The lawyers glanced at each other, realizing that this encounter had fundamentally altered their perception. Arguments about liability, property, and negligence felt trivial when faced with the clear demonstration of empathy, intuition, and natural intelligence. Once inside, Emma gently set the rescued dog down on a soft rug. She patted its head, whispered reassurances, and guided it toward a small water dish. Rex sat nearby, attentive and calm, signaling completion while still remaining vigilant. The lawyers, still recovering from the backyard revelation, quietly exchanged impressions. They had witnessed a scene that transcended ordinary expectation. A 3-year-old had orchestrated a precise, successful rescue, guided a trained K9, and displayed problem-solving skills that outshone adult expertise. For the first time that morning, their debate about legal responsibilities seemed almost irrelevant in comparison to the extraordinary events they had just observed. Emma, seemingly unaware of the impact of her actions, returned to her stuffed rabbit and resumed her quiet play. The rescued dog, now calmer, curled beside her as if sensing safety and gratitude. Rex remained by her side, eyes soft but alert, a silent acknowledgement of the child's leadership. Officer Daniels patted Rex's head lightly, still marveling at the unusual dynamic. The lawyers, humbled and awed, realized they were witnessing something rare, a demonstration of innate intelligence, empathy, and authority from someone so small and so young that it defied expectation. By the time the adults had collected themselves, the atmosphere in the house had transformed. Respect, wonder, and quiet admiration lingered in the air, mingling with the aroma of breakfast left on the table. Lawyers who had arrived with arguments and authority found themselves humbled by a child's insight. Officer Daniels knew that this day would remain etched in memory. Emma had orchestrated an extraordinary rescue, bridging human and animal understanding in a way few had ever witnessed. The quiet determination of a 3-year-old had solved a problem the adults could not, and in doing so, had left an indelible mark on everyone present. The air inside the house had shifted, an invisible weight settling over the room as the aftermath of the backyard rescue lingered. Lawyers who had arrived with purpose and agendas now found themselves frozen, mid-conversation, their arguments dissolved in awe. Papers rustled in their hands, pens hovered over notebooks, but no one wrote a word. The sight of a 3-year-old guiding a trained K-9 to a successful recovery was something that could not be dissected in legal terms or translated into policy. It was instinct, intuition, and quiet authority distilled into human form, a reality that left every adult present humbled. Emma, still cradling the small, trembling dog, seemed entirely oblivious to the effect she had on the room. She moved gently, coaxing the rescued animal to relax, whispering soft words that only it seemed to understand. Rex, trained for obedience, remained close, eyes scanning Emma's movements with unwavering focus. Officer Daniels observed quietly, allowing the child to maintain the lead while remaining vigilant. The lawyers, used to control and structure, now had no influence over the unfolding dynamics. Authority had shifted from the legal experts to a tiny child, and the shift was undeniable. One lawyer, a woman known for her rigorous courtroom presence, attempted to clear her throat. "Perhaps we should discuss the liability forms." Her voice faltered, and she stopped mid-sentence as if the words had no weight. She glanced at her colleagues, whose expressions mirrored hers, a mix of disbelief and reluctant admiration. It was impossible to argue when the room's focus had shifted entirely. Emma's calm authority, combined with Rex's responsiveness and the rescued dog's cautious trust, had created a scene that demanded acknowledgement beyond logic, strategy, or law. Officer Daniels knelt beside Emma and the rescued dog, quietly guiding Rex to maintain a protective but non-intrusive position. He marveled at the child's intuitive clarity. Even in his years of experience, he had never seen such a precise, calm orchestration between a toddler and a trained animal. Emma moved with purpose, gently encouraging the rescued dog to explore its surroundings, all the while whispering instructions to Rex. Every subtle gesture was followed with immediate precision, demonstrating that trust and empathy could surpass traditional authority in extraordinary ways. The lawyers whispered among themselves, trying to rationalize what they had seen. She just knows what to do," one admitted almost inaudibly. Her colleague nodded, muttering, "And he actually listens." Their observations captured the truth. Emma's presence had redefined authority in the room. Her actions demonstrated courage and intelligence beyond her years, and even seasoned professionals could not dismiss her impact. The legal documents, contracts, and risk assessments that had seemed urgent only moments ago now felt trivial in comparison to the quiet effectiveness of a child and a dog working in perfect sync. Emma slowly set the rescued dog down on the soft rug in the living room, keeping a protective hand lightly on its head. The dog, still trembling slightly, began to relax under her gentle touch. Rex remained alert, sitting close by with ears forward, tail moving slowly, acknowledging the child's direction. The room was silent except for the occasional whimper of the rescued pet and the soft murmurs of adults attempting to regain composure. Every eye followed Emma, captivated by her effortless balance of authority, patience, and compassion. The lawyers had never witnessed such a commanding presence emanate from someone so small. One of the lawyers finally spoke, her voice shaking slightly. I don't know how to explain this." Her statement captured the consensus in the room. Legal theory, professional experience, and authoritative presence were irrelevant when faced with the quiet confidence of a 3-year-old. The adults had watched as a child had orchestrated a precise, successful rescue, guiding a fully trained K9 and calming a frightened animal, all without force or aggression. Words and reason were insufficient to encapsulate the scene. It had to be observed, felt, and respected. Officer Daniels allowed a small smile, proud yet astonished at the unfolding scenario. He patted Rex gently, acknowledging the dog's responsiveness and cooperation while maintaining awareness of the rescued pet. Emma continued whispering softly, guiding the dog with subtle movements, tilts of her head, and gentle hand gestures. The lawyers, despite their training and authority, could only observe, frozen by the undeniable effectiveness of the child's instructions. Every subtle interaction carried weight. Every decision, no matter how small, demonstrated clarity and intelligence far beyond what the adults had anticipated. Minutes passed as Emma and Rex moved around the living room, ensuring the rescued dog remained comfortable and secure. The lawyers, now silent observers, watched every movement, noticing the rhythm and precision in the child's gestures. Even the interns, previously unnoticed, felt the gravity of the moment. This was more than a simple recovery. It was a masterclass in communication, observation, and instinct. The adults realized that all their experience, arguments, and expertise could not replicate what a child and a dog had accomplished through silent, intuitive understanding. Emma paused near the window, noticing the lawyers still standing awkwardly by the table. She looked at them briefly, her small eyes calm and unassuming, as if acknowledging their presence without invitation. Rex followed her gaze, tail wagging gently, ears forward, ready to respond to any instruction. Officer Daniels quietly stepped back, giving the child space to maintain her lead. The lawyers were forced to confront the truth. For once, authority and expertise had been outmatched by intuition and natural understanding. Their arguments, contracts, and courtroom strategies were now irrelevant in the presence of quiet competence. Emma gently guided the rescued dog toward a small bed in the corner of the living room. The animal, now calmer, sniffed around before settling down, occasionally glancing at the child for reassurance. Rex sat nearby, attentive but relaxed, eyes following Emma's subtle signals. Officer Daniels allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He had seen many rescues and operations, but the clarity, precision, and empathy exhibited by this child had left an impression that would linger far longer than any standard operation. Emma's combination of instinct, patience, and subtle authority was rare, almost unprecedented. The lawyers finally attempted to resume their discussion, hesitant and awkward. "Perhaps we should continue with the documentation," one ventured, voice faltering. The other lawyer shook her head slightly, unable to regain the same intensity she had moments before. The experience had humbled them. Authority had been redefined. They had witnessed something far greater than legal expertise, a demonstration of instinctive intelligence and leadership emerging from a child. Their arguments about liability and procedure seemed trivial, almost meaningless, in comparison to the silent command and guidance Emma had displayed. Emma returned to her stuffed rabbit, rocking it gently while keeping one eye on Rex and the rescued dog. She seemed entirely unaware of the magnitude of her actions, focused only on care, reassurance, and maintaining calm. The adults in the room could only watch, fascinated by the ease with which she commanded respect and attention from both humans and animals alike. Officer Daniels noted the lesson clearly. Sometimes, the smallest voices have the greatest impact. Authority does not always reside in age, size, or title. It can manifest in empathy, intuition, and quiet confidence. The lawyers, humbled and silent, glanced at each other, their expressions a mixture of admiration and disbelief. They had arrived confident, prepared, and authoritative. Now, they were witnesses to a display of competence that transcended experience. The child had orchestrated a precise, successful outcome that they could not replicate, proving that instinct, empathy, and observation can outweigh formal knowledge. For once, the courtroom-trained minds had been rendered irrelevant, replaced by awe at the simple, natural wisdom of a 3-year-old guiding a trained police dog through a delicate and successful rescue. By the time the morning had passed and the lawyers began to gather their belongings, the room carried an entirely new energy. Respect, awe, and quiet admiration mingled with the lingering scent of breakfast and the faint earthiness of the backyard leaves. Emma, small yet commanding in her presence, had transformed an ordinary day into something extraordinary. Officer Daniels patted Rex's head gently, acknowledging the partnership between child and dog, and silently recognizing the rare skill displayed. The adults left the house changed, humbled, and inspired. Emma had proven that extraordinary insight, courage, and intelligence can emerge in the most unexpected forms. By mid-afternoon, the quiet suburban street had begun to buzz with unexpected attention. What had started as a simple domestic incident, a missing dog, a routine welfare check, was rapidly transforming into something extraordinary. Videos recorded by the daycare staff and the attending lawyers had already begun circulating on social media. Clips of a tiny 3-year-old guiding a trained K9 to find a frightened, lost dog captured the imagination of viewers across the country. The moment Emma whispered, the dog responded, and Rex followed her subtle commands left viewers awestruck. Comments poured in. Admiration, disbelief, and joy mingled in every reaction. Emma, however, was completely unaware of the stir she had caused. Back at the house, she continued her play with her stuffed rabbit, occasionally glancing at the 2 dogs, one rescued, one trained, as if they were part of the same magical world she had always known. She didn't notice the lawyers whispering among themselves about the video clips, nor did she hear Officer Daniels' low chuckles at the growing attention. Her focus remained simple: comfort the small dog, ensure Rex stayed calm, and maintain the quiet order that only she seemed able to impose. Social media was alive with activity. Parents and dog lovers alike shared the videos, captions marveling at the toddler who talks to a police dog. News agencies called local offices, requesting interviews and background footage. The story resonated because it was relatable yet exceptional. Adults who had witnessed the event marveled at the intersection of innocence, intelligence, and instinct. Children's pages shared it with captions like "Emma saves the day," while local news featured slow-motion replays of her small hands guiding Rex toward the hidden dog. Each view, share, and comment amplified the sense of wonder surrounding the event. Meanwhile, the lawyers who had been part of the day's earlier debates found themselves fielding unexpected phone calls. Reporters sought statements, neighbors offered congratulations, and friends and relatives reached out in amazement. Their mourning, which had been defined by contracts, liability clauses, and procedural arguments, now revolved entirely around a 3-year-old's extraordinary actions. One of the lawyers, who had prided herself on professional composure, found her phone constantly buzzing with messages. "Can you tell me how it happened? We want your side of the story. Emma is amazing." Each message reminded her that the world outside her office viewed this event as nothing short of miraculous. Emma's parents were astonished by the sudden fame their daughter had achieved. They had known her as a precocious, observant child, quick to notice small details and sensitive to animals' needs. But they had never imagined that her instinctive interaction with a dog could capture national attention. They were proud, of course, but also cautious, wanting to protect her childhood from becoming a spectacle. Still, they recognized the significance of the day. Emma had not just rescued a dog. She had demonstrated courage, patience, and an uncanny ability to communicate and lead, qualities remarkable for anyone, let alone a 3-year-old. Back at the daycare, teachers and staff discussed the incident with wonder. They recounted how Emma had calmly guided Rex around the backyard, moving with purpose, speaking softly, and signaling the exact locations where the missing dog might be. They marveled at her focus and at the dog's responsiveness, realizing that this was no ordinary play session. In conversations with parents, staff emphasized how intuition, empathy, and observation had come together to create an extraordinary moment of clarity. Emma's actions became a lesson for everyone. Even the youngest members of a community could inspire change, demonstrate leadership, and affect outcomes in meaningful ways. Officer Daniels received calls from colleagues at the precinct, eager to hear about the unusual case. Many were skeptical at first, thinking the story exaggerated. But when he described the precision, the synchronization between child and dog, and the ultimate rescue of the small animal, their skepticism faded. He shared clips from the video, showing Emma's subtle hand gestures and whispered words, Rex's attentive responses, and the moment the missing dog emerged from the leaves. The law enforcement community marveled at what they termed a rare example of instinct meeting training in perfect harmony. Lawyers who had once debated legal responsibility found themselves reflecting quietly. Their carefully prepared arguments, formalities, and strategies seemed trivial compared to the demonstration of innate understanding and courage they had witnessed. Every paper they had reviewed that morning suddenly seemed secondary to a scene that captured universal attention. In the following hours, the child became the focus of countless articles, news segments, and social media posts, each one emphasizing her empathy, insight, and the remarkable interaction with a trained K-9. Even seasoned professionals found themselves humbled by the extraordinary nature of what had transpired. Emma remained blissfully unaware of the public attention, content in her small world of toys and dogs. She guided the rescued pet gently toward a soft bed, spoke reassuringly to it, and ensured Rex remained calm at her side. The lawyers observed quietly, marveling at the child's composure and patience. Officer Daniels, too, allowed a rare moment of reflection, acknowledging the powerful bond between a child and a trained dog. It was not just a rescue, it was a demonstration of communication, intuition, and instinctive intelligence that transcended age, size, and experience. By evening, the story had reached national news outlets. Reporters interviewed parents, neighbors, and daycare staff, highlighting Emma's remarkable ability to communicate and guide Rex to the hidden dog. The clips went viral, viewed millions of times within hours. Audiences were captivated not only by the child's courage and empathy, but by the undeniable proof that age and size do not limit understanding, insight, or action. Adults and children alike were inspired, finding hope and awe in the fact that a 3-year-old had accomplished something that trained professionals had only dreamt of achieving. Communities near and far shared the story on social media, often paired with images of Emma cradling the rescued dog or pointing subtly toward Rex as he followed her lead. Comments ranged from incredulous admiration to heartfelt praise, capturing the essence of why the incident resonated. It was universal, simple in its humanity, and extraordinary in its execution. Teachers used it as an example of observation and empathy. Parents cited it as proof that courage could come in the smallest packages, and law enforcement saw it as a testament to the power of partnership between humans and dogs. That evening, as the house settled into quiet, the lawyers, Officer Daniels, and daycare staff reflected on the day's events. Emma had returned to play, unaffected by the attention she had received. The rescued dog had begun to relax, curling beside her as if aware of the safety and care surrounding it. Rex lay nearby, ears forward, eyes occasionally flicking to Emma, ready to respond to the next silent cue. Everyone present felt a quiet sense of humility, recognizing the extraordinary capabilities of a child who had acted with courage, insight, and instinctive leadership. As night fell, the story continued to spread. Social media posts, news articles, and word of mouth amplified the impact of Emma's actions. Her parents watched in quiet amazement, proud of their daughter while mindful of protecting her childhood. Officer Daniels filed his report, noting the unusual nature of the interaction, the effectiveness of the child's guidance, and the remarkable outcome. Lawyers reflected on the day's events, understanding that their previous authority had been humbled, replaced by respect for intuition and natural intelligence. Emma had demonstrated that extraordinary results often come from the unlikeliest sources. Sometimes the smallest, quietest voices are the most powerful. By the time the night had fully settled, Emma and the dogs rested quietly. The house, which had been the stage for an event of national attention, was now calm and peaceful. The lawyers, Officer Daniels, and daycare staff were left with a sense of awe, respect, and an unforgettable lesson in humility. Emma's simple yet profound demonstration of empathy, leadership, and communication had captured hearts across the nation, proving that courage and intelligence know no age. In the quiet of the Ohio suburb, a 3-year-old had reminded the world that sometimes the smallest heroes leave the largest impact. By the next morning, the story of Emma and her K9 companion had exploded beyond local recognition. Social media buzzed relentlessly. Videos of the 3-year-old calmly directing Rex to locate the missing dog had gone viral, shared by tens of thousands, commented on by thousands more. News networks scrambled to cover the story, calling Emma's parents for interviews, while reporters from morning shows queued for footage and photographs. Headlines read, "Toddler and Police Dog, Unlikely Heroes Save Missing Dog," or 3-year-old Guides K9 with Incredible Instinct. The small Ohio suburb, once quiet and sleepy, now felt like the center of national fascination. Emma, blissfully unaware, continued her morning routine. She hugged her stuffed rabbit tightly, her small eyes flicking toward Rex and the rescued dog as they lounged quietly beside her. She had no idea she had become a national sensation, that her calm determination and instinctive authority had captured the hearts of strangers across the country. To her, the day was no different from yesterday: play, gentle whispers to her furry friends, careful guidance, and quiet observation. Yet to the adults around her, everything had changed. Officer Daniels found himself fielding phone calls from colleagues and local media outlets. "Is this true?" one reporter asked. "Absolutely," he replied, smiling though still astonished himself. "I've never witnessed anything like it. The child guided Rex with such precision, communicated without force, and recovered the lost dog flawlessly. It was extraordinary." He repeated the story countless times, but each retelling felt insufficient. Words could not fully convey the precision, empathy, and subtle authority Emma had displayed. Every motion of her small hands, every whisper to Rex, every gentle nudge to the rescued dog had carried more meaning than any report could capture. At the daycare, teachers marveled again as Emma arrived, now celebrated as a local hero. Children and staff alike were excited, though few truly understood the magnitude of her actions. The staff recounted her calm demeanor, her patience, and the almost imperceptible cues she had given Rex that led to the successful rescue. Parents arrived, anxious to witness the child who had captivated the nation, and teachers quietly explained how extraordinary it was for someone so small to demonstrate such focus, empathy, and leadership. Emma played quietly, unaware of the whispers, the accolades, and the eyes of strangers watching her every move. Meanwhile, lawyers who had been present during the rescue found themselves fielding emails and calls from friends, family, and colleagues eager to hear their perspective. Their professional expertise, which had dominated the morning's interactions, suddenly felt secondary. They reflected on the way Emma had redirected authority, demonstrating clarity and intelligence that left adults speechless. What had begun as a simple welfare check had turned into a national lesson in humility. They shared their accounts of the day, noting how every subtle gesture Emma made was followed precisely by Rex, the K9, and how even the rescued dog seemed to understand her intent. Social media posts grew more elaborate. Videos slowed down to highlight her precise gestures, captions praised her patience, and hashtags like Toddler Hero and Emma and Rex trended nationally. Animal lovers, parents, and educators alike marveled at the dynamic between child and canine. Emma's quiet confidence and empathy had inspired discussions about the intelligence and sensitivity of children, the remarkable bond between humans and dogs, and the power of instinctive communication. Each share amplified the story, and every comment reinforced the sense of wonder surrounding the 3-year-old hero. Emma's parents watched the growing attention with a mixture of pride and caution. They were amazed at their daughter's natural ability to connect with animals and solve a problem that had confounded adults, but they also wanted to protect her from becoming overwhelmed by the fame. They encouraged interviews in measured doses, careful to emphasize the importance of her age, her calm nature, and the role of the dogs in her success. Every interaction reminded them that while Emma was extraordinary, she was still a child who thrived in the safety of her home, her toys, and her routines. Officer Daniels reflected on the day's events with quiet awe. He knew that police dogs were trained for obedience, but nothing could have prepared him for the precision and trust that existed between Emma and Rex. Each motion, each whisper was executed flawlessly, demonstrating that leadership did not always depend on authority, size, or experience. It could emerge from empathy, observation, and instinct. In training sessions, officers often discussed coordination, cues, and commands, but few could teach the natural clarity and understanding Emma had displayed. She had become an unexpected teacher of observation and trust, without even realizing it. Lawyers, once preoccupied with contracts and legal minutiae, now marveled at the emotional and practical lessons of the day. They discussed how the child's calm demeanor had transformed a chaotic situation into a controlled, successful operation. They reflected on the humility required to acknowledge someone else's authority, even when it comes from someone so small. Over calls and emails, they shared their astonishment with colleagues. A 3-year-old had orchestrated a rescue with precision that no adult, not even trained professionals, could replicate. The world outside the courtroom seemed suddenly larger, stranger, and more inspiring. As evening approached, Emma's story became a topic on national television. Anchors marveled at her calm determination, the interaction with Rex, and the successful rescue. Interviews with neighbors, daycare staff, and Officer Daniels highlighted her rare ability to command attention and respect through subtle communication. The narrative emphasized that her success was not only due to her natural empathy, but also her keen observation skills and patient leadership. Viewers across the country watched in awe, captivated by the image of a tiny child whispering instructions, while a police dog followed her lead with unwavering focus. Even in her quiet home, Emma continued to guide the rescued dog gently, speaking softly, checking for comfort, and ensuring Rex remained calm. She remained unaware of the attention she had garnered, focused entirely on her immediate surroundings, her pets, her toys, and the world she could control with patience and empathy. The juxtaposition of her small size and her profound capability fascinated adults nationwide. The lawyers, Officer Daniels, and even national viewers had all been reminded that sometimes the greatest power is quiet, subtle, and unassuming. By the end of the day, the story had captured hearts across the United States. Social media continued to buzz, news outlets recounted every detail, and experts in child development and animal behavior commented on the remarkable coordination between Emma and Rex. Everyone agreed on one thing: Emma's calm, quiet authority had achieved something extraordinary. She had not only rescued a dog but had taught adults, professionals, and the nation a lesson in humility, observation, and the immense power of empathy. In the quiet of the evening, as the house finally settled, Emma lay with her stuffed rabbit and the rescued dog curled beside her. Rex remained vigilant, a silent guardian, but even he seemed to recognize the child's intuitive command. Officer Daniels and the lawyers reflected on the remarkable events, humbled by the demonstration of leadership, focus, and trust that Emma had embodied. Across the country, viewers continued to share her story, inspired by the courage and insight of a child whose quiet confidence had left an indelible mark. The following morning, Emma's small Ohio town had transformed almost overnight. Neighbors spoke in hushed, reverent tones about the 3-year-old whose calm whispers had guided a police dog to a missing pet. Children at the local playground excitedly reenacted the rescue, pretending to be Emma or Rex, while parents looked on, marveling at the story that had spread nationally. Local newspapers featured her on the front page with a photograph capturing her soft gaze and small hands holding the rescued dog. The headlines read, "3-year-old hero commands respect from K9," and "Toddler leads police dog on miraculous rescue." Emma's fame had become both a source of pride and gentle concern for her parents. At home, Emma remained blissfully unaware of the magnitude of her fame. She continued her routines, guiding the rescued dog toward a cozy corner, whispering soft reassurances, and ensuring Rex stayed attentive yet relaxed. The household hummed with quiet energy, but nothing disrupted her sense of focus. Emma's parents were careful to keep her world stable and grounded, limiting media exposure, while still answering occasional calls from reporters. They had learned quickly that their daughter's extraordinary abilities attracted attention, but they wanted to preserve her childhood, ensuring she could grow without pressure, praise, or expectation overshadowing her natural instincts. Officer Daniels arrived at the house early that morning, bringing coffee and a calm presence. He had become something of a quiet advocate for Emma, explaining to colleagues and law enforcement officials how remarkable her coordination with Rex had been. In his years of service, he had never witnessed such precise communication between child and dog. His reports, once factual and procedural, now included admiration for the way instinct, patience, and empathy could intersect to achieve extraordinary results. Emma's actions had taught him a lesson he would not soon forget, that observation and trust can surpass formal training in ways that surprise even the most experienced professionals. Meanwhile, the lawyers who had been present during the initial rescue felt a quiet reverence for the child. They had arrived expecting routine legal discussion, contracts, and liability forms, yet had been left speechless by Emma's calm authority. Over the past 24 hours, they had fielded endless calls from friends, family, and colleagues, sharing the story of a child who had outmaneuvered adult expectations. In whispered office conversations, they marveled at the lesson learned. Intelligence, courage, and leadership could emerge in the smallest and most unlikely packages. Emma had shown them humility, patience, and the extraordinary value of listening, observing, and trusting intuition. Across town, the rescued dog became an instant celebrity in its own right. Local residents, already captivated by Emma's story, visited the house to see the small pair of heroes. Social media posts showed the child guiding the dog to comfort, demonstrating the careful balance of patience and empathy that had captured national attention. Teachers at the local daycare discussed the unusual bond between the child and the animals, emphasizing that Emma's success was not just in the rescue, but in the quiet guidance she had provided. Each gentle command, each soft whisper, had been a lesson in leadership that adults and children alike marveled at. Emma's parents continued to navigate the delicate balance between privacy and public fascination. They answered questions from journalists politely, highlighting the child's natural empathy, her intuitive communication with animals, and the importance of allowing her to remain a child. They emphasized that the rescue had been a collaborative effort with Rex, the trained police dog, and that Emma's brilliance lay in her ability to inspire trust, patience, and calm in both animals and adults. Public fascination continued to grow, yet her parents remained vigilant, ensuring that the experience would enhance rather than overwhelm her development. By midday, national news outlets aired stories on morning television, featuring footage of Emma directing Rex with subtle gestures. Experts in child development analyzed her calm focus, patience, and instinctive leadership. Animal behaviorists highlighted the remarkable responsiveness of Rex to Emma's cues, pointing out that such a bond between human and K9 was rare, especially with a child so young. The segment emphasized Emma's ability to maintain authority without fear, aggression, or overt command, demonstrating that empathy and observation could inspire cooperation in ways that force or authority often could not. Local residents began referring to Emma as the little hero of Ohio. Children left handmade cards, drawings, and small gifts at her doorstep, celebrating the courage and calm she had displayed. Parents shared the story with friends and colleagues, emphasizing the unexpected brilliance of a 3-year-old who had orchestrated a successful rescue. The rescue dog, now settled into the household, displayed a growing bond with Emma, often nuzzling her gently or following her quiet instructions. Rex remained vigilant yet calm, a testament to the harmony achieved between child and trained animal. Despite the growing attention, Emma's focus never wavered. She continued her daily routines, guiding the rescued dog, playing with toys, and speaking gently to Rex. Her parents, teachers, and Officer Daniels noted the quiet confidence she carried, a composure that had not been forced but naturally emerged through patience and empathy. Even as cameras and visitors trickled by, Emma remained in her small, calm world, showing everyone that extraordinary skill could coexist with simplicity, innocence, and the gentle rhythms of a child's life. By evening, the house had returned to a quieter pace. Emma curled up on the couch with her rescued dog at her side, Rex sitting alert nearby. Officer Daniels stayed for a while, reflecting on the lessons learned from the day. Lawyers who had been present in the morning were no longer focused on disputes or procedures. Instead, they discussed the humility and awareness Emma had inspired. Even the most skeptical observers had acknowledged that the child's intuitive leadership, empathy, and communication with animals were beyond ordinary expectations. As the sun set, the small home became a sanctuary, a space where Emma could remain a child while her story inspired thousands. Across town, neighbors whispered excitedly about the little hero who had captured national attention without even knowing it. Teachers and parents emphasized that courage, empathy, and patience could manifest in even the smallest human form. Emma, with her calm demeanor, subtle gestures, and gentle words, had created a ripple effect of admiration and wonder that would persist long after the initial rescue. By nightfall, Emma lay in bed with her stuffed rabbit, her rescued dog curled beside her. Rex lay quietly on the rug, eyes alert yet relaxed. Outside, the stars twinkled in the quiet Ohio sky, mirroring the quiet brilliance of a child who had, through empathy and intuition, achieved something extraordinary. Officer Daniels and the lawyers, reflecting on the events of the past 2 days, recognized that Emma's actions had redefined their understanding of leadership, authority, and communication. A 3-year-old had become a local legend, not for fame or recognition, but for quiet courage, patience, and the ability to inspire trust in both humans and animals alike. The morning sun filtered gently through the blinds, casting warm light across Emma's small bedroom. The rescued dog stirred at her side, tail flicking lazily, while Rex, ever vigilant, rested near the foot of her bed. Emma yawned, hugging her stuffed rabbit, her small hands brushing the soft fur of the dog beside her. She was blissfully unaware of the magnitude of what had transpired, the nation's attention, the social media frenzy, or the waves of admiration that had flooded her town. To her, the world remained simple: comfort, play, and quiet care for her furry friends. News outlets were already preparing live coverage for a formal recognition ceremony to honor the extraordinary bravery and intuition of the 3-year-old. Local officials, law enforcement, and community members had gathered to celebrate the child whose calm authority had guided a trained police dog to recover a missing pet. Invitations had been sent, banners prepared, and press cameras lined the hall. Emma's parents, quietly proud, were careful to preserve her sense of routine while allowing her to participate in a moment that celebrated her natural courage and empathy. Officer Daniels arrived early, carrying Rex and ensuring the rescued dog was comfortable for the ceremony. He marveled at the contrast between the quiet, intimate world of Emma's home and the public stage awaiting her. He had spent decades in law enforcement, training, observing, and participating in rescues, yet nothing had prepared him for this. Emma's calm authority, her subtle hand gestures, and her gentle whispers had inspired trust, obedience, and courage in Rex and the rescued dog. The event would honor her actions, but it could never truly replicate the quiet mastery she had demonstrated in her home and backyard. The town hall filled quickly with parents, local officials, neighbors, and reporters. Cameras clicked softly, capturing every moment, but Emma remained focused on Rex and her rescued dog, calm amidst the bustle. Her parents whispered gently to her, encouraging her to smile and enjoy the attention, but the child's demeanor remained serene, her actions deliberate yet unassuming. When it was time to step forward, she held her stuffed rabbit tightly and moved slowly, guiding the rescued dog and signaling subtly to Rex, who followed her lead without hesitation. A hush fell over the room as the mayor approached the podium. "Today, we recognize an extraordinary child," he began, voice steady but filled with pride. "A child whose courage, patience, and intuition have inspired not only our town but a nation. Emma, at just 3 years old, demonstrated leadership beyond her years, guiding a trained police dog and rescuing a lost pet. Your actions remind us all that bravery, empathy, and intelligence know no age." Cameras clicked, reporters leaned forward, and the audience watched in quiet admiration. Emma, seated on a small chair near the podium, glanced at Rex and the rescued dog. Her gaze was calm, her small hands gently patting the rescued dog's head. She remained unaware of the applause, the cameras, or the national recognition. To her, this was not about fame. It was about doing what felt right. Her parents smiled, proud and slightly amazed, as they watched the child who had captivated an entire nation remain grounded in her simple, empathetic world. Officer Daniels stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "I've been in law enforcement for over 20 years, he said, "and I've trained countless K-9 teams, but I have never seen anything like what Emma accomplished. Her ability to communicate, guide, and inspire trust in Rex and the rescued dog is unparalleled. It's a testament to patience, empathy, and instinctive intelligence. Today, we honor her as a hero, not for fame, but for her extraordinary courage and wisdom." The audience erupted into applause, the room filled with admiration and awe. The lawyers who had been present during the original rescue were also in attendance. They quietly observed Emma's demeanor, noting her calm confidence and subtle leadership. They whispered to one another about how remarkable it was to witness authority emerge from someone so small. Their professional training and years of courtroom experience could not have prepared them for the quiet mastery Emma displayed. They nodded respectfully, acknowledging the lessons she had unknowingly imparted. That insight, empathy, and calm focus can achieve extraordinary outcomes, sometimes in ways adults cannot replicate. Emma's parents guided her forward to receive a small plaque from the mayor. The plaque bore her name and a simple inscription, "For courage, empathy, and leadership beyond years." Emma accepted it with quiet focus, gently patting the rescued dog and glancing at Rex, who remained obediently by her side. The audience cheered, yet Emma's attention never wavered from her companions. It was clear that her heroism was not motivated by recognition. It was rooted in instinct, care, and the quiet understanding that she had made a difference. After the formal presentation, reporters approached for interviews, eager to capture Emma's words. But she remained calm, speaking only when gently prompted and always in terms simple and true to her age. "I just wanted the dog to be okay," she said softly, smiling at the rescued dog curled beside her. "Rex helped me." The room fell silent, touched by the innocence and clarity of her statement. The simplicity of her explanation belied the extraordinary nature of her actions, a quiet reminder that heroism often comes from care, patience, and instinct rather than fame or force. As the ceremony concluded, children from the community gathered near Emma, eager to see the child who had guided a police dog and rescued a lost pet. They held handmade signs, drawings, and small gifts, celebrating her bravery. Parents took photographs, neighbors whispered in admiration, and local officials smiled proudly. Emma continued to interact gently with the rescued dog and Rex, maintaining the calm, focused demeanor that had made her extraordinary in the first place. She was the hero of the moment, yet remained, at heart, simply a child acting with empathy and understanding. Officer Daniels knelt beside her as the crowd began to disperse. "You did something incredible," he said quietly, his voice sincere. "Not just with Rex, but with the rescued dog and with all of us watching. You've shown that courage doesn't depend on age and leadership doesn't depend on size." Emma smiled faintly, patting Rex and whispering softly to the rescued dog. She nodded slightly, understanding in her own way that something remarkable had happened, even if she didn't fully comprehend the national attention surrounding her. That evening back at home, the household was quiet. Emma sat on the couch with her rescued dog nestled beside her, Rex lying nearby. The soft glow of lamps illuminated the room, casting gentle shadows over the small trio. Her parents reflected on the whirlwind of attention and admiration that had surrounded their daughter. They marveled at her humility, her natural instinct, and the calm authority she displayed. They realized that her actions had not only inspired a nation, but had also imparted a timeless lesson. True heroism is measured not in applause or accolades, but in empathy, courage, and quiet action. National coverage continued for days, sharing clips of Emma guiding Rex, comforting the rescued dog, and demonstrating remarkable focus and patience. Experts in child development and animal behavior weighed in, praising her instinctive communication and leadership. Social media platforms buzzed with admiration, viewers inspired by her courage and compassion. Emma's story became a reminder to the world that sometimes the smallest among us can achieve the most extraordinary feats, not through force or authority, but through patience, empathy, and a deep understanding of those around them. As night settled over the Ohio suburb, Emma lay in bed, her rescued dog curled beside her, Rex quietly vigilant at her feet. The events of the past days, rescue, national attention, recognition, had left an indelible mark on the community, the town, and countless viewers across the country. Yet to Emma, life remained simple, her toys, her animals, and the quiet rhythms of childhood. She had saved a dog, inspired a town, and captivated a nation, but she remained blissfully, beautifully herself, a 3-year-old whose quiet courage and empathy left an extraordinary legacy. In the end, Emma's story became more than a tale of rescue. It became a testament to the power of instinct, patience, and kindness. It reminded adults, professionals, and children alike that leadership can come in the smallest, most unexpected forms. Across the nation, hearts were touched, lessons were learned, and communities inspired. And in her small Ohio home, with her rescued dog and loyal K9 at her side, Emma rested peacefully, a quiet hero whose actions would be remembered far beyond her years.